Welcome everyone. Now I've spent months strengthening my hips, glutes, core, but my low back would still feel tight on occasion, still felt restricted, still felt off. It wasn't until I started focusing on one often overlooked muscle that everything started to finally make sense. And that muscle is the quadratus lumborum, or QL muscle. If you've been doing all the right things like mobility, strengthening, and stretching, and your low back still feels tight or uneven, there's a real good chance the Q well is the missing piece. For the longest time, I was ignorant about this muscle and its impact on spinal mobility. And because of that, it quietly slowed my recovery. The quadratus lumborum sits deep in your lower back. It connects your pelvis to your ribs and stabilizes your spine anytime you walk, bend, or shift weight. A weak or tight QL muscle can cause persistent low back tightness, one sided tension or pulling, and compensation in the hips and glutes, which means you can be doing everything right except this one thing. My breakthrough came when I realized that this wasn't just a hip issue, it was a structural issue. My body wasn't failing, I just wasn't looking at the whole picture. I'm going to show you the exact stretch release method that helped me finally create space in the QL. This isn't about forcing anything, we're just gently opening the area and letting it relax. Okay, so you're gonna wanna find something that you could sit on comfortably. And before we start this, I'm gonna go over some postural alignment cues that you need to do so that you could perform this stretch and feel it in the right areas. To start off, your feet should be wide, more than shoulder width apart. You don't want them too narrow because that's going to limit your stretch. So nice and wide. You want to make sure your glutes always maintain contact with whatever you're sitting on. For no reason during the stretch should you be lifting up or being uneven. No, they need to be nice and leveled, sitting on whatever you're sitting on. Our pelvis is one of the most important things in this stretch. You do not want to anteriorly tilt or poke your butt out because we are not going for a hinge. That's something completely different. You want to keep your pelvis tucked in and posteriorly tilted. Same thing for the rib cage. We do not want to flare this out because flaring out your rib cage and pushing your butt back only shortens your spine, and we're not going for a hinge movement. We want to get as much length as we can. So we tuck in our pelvis and we tuck in our rib cage, and we can already see we're creating more length throughout the entire spine. So we're going to do that. Then you want to get both your hands and lock them in together. And you don't want your shoulders overly protracted or overly retracted. Just keep it nice and neutral. So shoulders are neutral, rib cage is tucked in, pelvis is also tucked in. And then so we're going to stretch our left QL first. So we're going to side bend to the right. And before we do this, you want to keep your abs, your core relaxed. You don't want to use your obliques to side bend and move you. You want all the focus to be on the QL. All the activation and all the work should be coming from the QL muscle. No, do not use your core. Just keep it relaxed. So let me get into starting position again. Pelvis tucked in, rib cage tucked in, arms nice and locked in, shoulders neutral position. And I'm going to side lean as much as I can to the right, focusing on getting the stretch on that left QL. And as soon as I hit my limit, I'm going to use my mid back to lean forward. And that's going to put even more stretch on that QL. And once you've hit your limit with that as well, you're going to want to hang out here for about 5 seconds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, this is the important part. Before we go back up, we want to use our QL and not our obliques to go back to center. And this is going to isolate your QL and teach it how to activate to move your spine. So we're going to go back up to center, focusing only on using the QL. And that would be 1 rep. And I'm going to stretch my right QL. So now I'm going to side bend to the left. So once again, feet are wide, pelvis tucked in, rib cage tucked in, shoulders not overly protracted, not overly retracted, but nice and neutral. Hands are locked in. Then we're going to side lean to the left, stretching the right QL as far as we can. It may look different for you, but as soon as you reach your limit, and you'll feel it when you can, now using your mid back, lean forward, and you should feel that stretch with the QL. And then just hang out here for about 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we're going to go back up, only using our QL to lift ourselves back to center position. You want to go nice and slow. So not only does this stretch the QL, but it also strengthens it and isolates it to teach it how to actually function as it should. We do one more just for a good example. Make sure you keep your breath nice and steady. As you're side bending, you should feel your QL stretch out and be elongated. And then once you add in the forward leaning with the mid back, you're going to feel it even more. This is where your QL should be fully stretched out, once you're creating all that length in the back. Then slowly, using your QL only, lift yourself back up. Now starting off, you want to do a total about 8 reps, so like 4 on each side. And eventually you could progress this with like a light dumbbell or weight with your hands. But that is pretty much the stretch and release method I use. Not only can the stretch and release method be done while sitting down, but you can also do it while standing, just in case if you have nothing that you could sit on. I'm going to show you real quick. The same principles apply, except that you don't need to have a wide stance while you're doing it standing. You could just have a regular shoulder width stance. But the same postural cues apply. So you want to have your pelvis tucked in and posteriorly tilted. Keep your rib cage also tucked in. Make sure your hands are nice and locked in. Shoulders should not be overly protracted or retracted, but just neutral. And if I want to stretch my left QL, I'm going to side bend to the right, making sure not to use my abs and obliques. So I'm going to keep my core relaxed and focus on the QL doing the work. So we're going to side bend to the right as much as we can until we hit our limit. And as you're side bending, you should feel your QL starting to elongate and stretch. And once you hit your limit on the side bend, using your mid back, the muscles in your mid back, lean forward. And that's going to give you even more of a deeper stretch. And then you just hang out here. Now this is where your QL should be maximally stretched. Hang out here for about like 5 seconds. Then go back up using only your QL muscle to pull you back up. Nice and slow. Now you're back to starting position. And let's do the other side. So same thing, make sure our posture is nice and good. Side bend to the left as much as we can. Focusing on getting that full stretch in the QL. Once we hit our limit, using our mid back, lean forward, and then just hang out here about 5 seconds. And right here, I really feel the stretch. This is where you should feel the most stretch, when you're like dangling right here. And then you're gonna pull yourself back up using only your QL. And there you have it. That is how this stretch and release method will look sitting down or standing. Whichever version you do, they both do the same things. The stretch and release method helps create relief and space, but relief alone isn't enough. To actually change how your back feels, we need to strengthen the QL as well. One of the most easiest and beginner-friendly exercises I recommend for those who are starting to strengthen their QL would be the side plank, but with one twist. And before we get into that, I want to stress how important, once again, postural alignment and control is while doing this exercise to get the most out of it. And I usually recommend doing this exercise to strengthen your QL after the stretch and release method, so you get You open up your QL first and then you strengthen it, and that's how you get the most out of everything. So before we get into this, let's start with postural alignment. So you want to get into a side plank position. You want to make sure your rib cage is once again tucked in. We do not want it flaring out. And you want your pelvis to be tucked in as well, posteriorly tilted. Posteriorly tilted. We do not want our butt sticking out. We want our pelvis nice and tucked in. Our core as well, nice and tucked in. Same thing with our ribs. So we can have one nice, solid, straight line. And unlike a regular side plank where our feet are stacked, we want a staggered position. So the leg that is on the same side of the QL you are working on, you want that to be behind the top leg. So in this case, it's my left leg because we're working on the left QL. So my left leg stays behind my top leg, which would be my right leg. So once again, before we do this, make sure our rib cage is tucked in, pelvis posteriorly tilted, staggered position, and then we go up. And I usually like to place my other hand on my hip, and then you just hold it here, and you should feel, you're going to feel your obliques as well, because obviously they're going to be helping you stay up. But with this staggered position, it really isolates the QL, so you're going to be getting that QL endurance and strength. And if you're just starting out, I recommend doing 3 sets, obviously each side, for at least 30 seconds. And this exercise looks simple, but it's actually, I usually do a minute and I'm already dying by the end of the minute. So do not think that this exercise is easy. And you should really feel that QL really struggling and fighting, mostly activating. And that's what we want. We want the QL to activate so it could strengthen. Just keep holding it there until you can't anymore. I'm not going to hold it for that long because I'm going to get tired. I just did those literally the other day. But yeah, that's the side plank with the little twist for more focused QL activation. And if that is too much for you, there's an even more beginner-friendly version, which would be the kneeling or the side plank on your knees. So if that's too much, same thing, just go on your knees right here. Bend your lower legs. Same postural alignment cues, keep your ribs tucked in, pelvis tucked in, and then there you go. Hold it for as long as you can. Same thing, I would also recommend 3 sets, obviously using each side. So left and right, 1 set, left and right, 2 sets, left and right, 3 sets, 30 seconds each hold. And that would be the even more beginner friendly. So if you find the regular side plank difficult, you can always do that version as well. So if your low back still feels stubborn, even after doing everything right, don't overlook the QL muscles. Sometimes it's not about doing more. It's about finally doing the right thing for your current situation. If you're on your own recovery journey and this video helped you understand your body better, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and check out my other videos related to rehab, exercise, and recovery. Thank you for your time.